I sometimes get asked, what do I think of both the accusations of anti-Semitism being present on university campuses and of the Trump administration's attempt to crack down on university campuses under the heading of cracking down on anti-Semitism. What I think of is, shockingly, the Torah portion. The Torah this week teaches us about the scapegoat. This is something that happens on Yom Kippur. We talk about this, but we read it in the Torah this week as well. It says that the Israelites would confess their sins and commit to doing better. And they would confess their sins, and the high priest would do the same, first on a goat that he would put his hands on and confess the sins of the people. And that goat would be sacrificed to Hashem, to God. And then on a second, identical goat. The difference between the two is only that they were chosen randomly, one dedicated to God and the other sent La'azazel. It's not clear what Azazel is. It could be hell or a demon or the wilderness, or it's something negative. And the Talmud tells us that this goat was sent into the wilderness and shoved off a cliff, bearing the sins of the people. This is the scapegoat. The two otherwise identical goats, one dedicated to God, which is good, and the other is a scapegoat, carries sins to hell or something like this. I think that's part of what's going on. I think that in these university protests, I have no doubt that people feel that they're feeling sincerely, but it strikes me that Israel, standing in for the Jews, is a scapegoat for their own sins and their own difficulties. How else? This week there were big protests at Columbia University and also at the University of Washington, groups that seem to be comfortable allying themselves with Hamas by their own words, and approving of the horrors of October 7th by their own words, and living as individuals who aren't part of, to my knowledge, Native American tribes, and they're living in North America. How is it that they're accusing the Jews of Israel of being colonialist settlers when the designation might better apply to them? This seems to be a scapegoat-style thing, where they are confessing the sins that many in the world are guilty of, putting them on one otherwise randomly chosen group, and by sacrificing this group, it makes them feel better for what they are. The administration might be doing the same thing. There is a problem with anti-Semitism on campus. There's no doubt about it. There are these groups that, again, publicly support Hamas. There are groups that, again, at Columbia, that publicly call for the death of Zionists, of which I am one. Or for, from the river to the sea, Palestine will be free, this sort of like desire for an ethnic cleansing of the Jews of Israel. Or from water to water, Palestine will be Arab as it is in Arabic. That chant is like, so again, these are calls for ethnic cleansing. But like those goats, take what you yourself are guilty of and confess it on one and use that scapegoat to make yourself feel better. I read the letter also. So there is anti-Semitism on campus. There is no doubt about it, and it wouldn't be tolerated if it were directed against other groups. And the administration, I read the letter that Secretary of Education Linda McMahon wrote to Harvard this week, doesn't seem totally concerned with anti-Semitism. Really comes off, you can read it, feels more of a desire for more political power for her side on campuses. It doesn't seem to be about protecting a particularly vulnerable minority group. I think the administration itself seems to be using the universities, themselves guilty of bigotry, as a scapegoat to cover up their own bigotries. The administration itself, Mr. Trump himself, has sort of a mixed record on tamping down anti-Semitism and not platforming anti-Semitic voices or rehabilitating them. We see this, with Kanye West and Nick Fuentes and Tucker Carlson. People who have trafficked in anti-Semitic ideas aren't exactly pushed out. So again, I think it's a scapegoat thing. I think there is trouble with anti-Semitism on campus. There is no doubt about that. And it's good to push universities to address that fully. And I don't think the administration is so sincere in how they pursue it. We as Jews are obligated to do, also in this week's Torah portion, to try and be kadosh, holy, separate, distinct, elevated. We don't have to be pawns in somebody else's game. We don't have to be the scapegoat for one side or a pretext for another. We can be intelligent enough to recognize that sometimes both sides might not be acting in the interest of, well, anybody. Certainly not in the interest of American or Israeli Jews, and call them out on it. It's not so simple, but we can see through it and still, with all of that, have a Shabbat Shalom.